Hello, friends. This is Carl from Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. Welcome to my podcast. So today's episode, guys, is just a sort of revelation for myself, for what's going on in the country, and pretty much how I'm feeling and understanding and realizing what's happening here. So recently I was listening to some other podcasters, and I ran across one from a New York Times columnist. And basically the name of the podcast was Don't Believe Them. He was saying don't believe them. Don't believe him. I should say that. Him. And you know who the operative him is in this setting. Our dear president. So it got me to really thinking about this journey that I'm doing here on this podcast and trying to send truth to the people, because there was so much that wasn't sent to the people. And there are so many of us who could care less about government and don't really understand what is unfolding right before our eyes. And I have put myself to a point where I need to get the people to know what is happening. They have to understand, because we as Americans have always been in a country where we didn't have to worry about unrest. We don't have to worry about pretty much bombs and things coming to our country. I mean, although we've had some disasters and what have you, but pretty much America is a safe place to live. So we don't worry about overthrowing of governments and all this sort of things like that. That's not who we are. That's not who we are. So people tend to have gotten relaxed and know that our leadership and our Constitution and everything is going to prevail, and none of this stuff is ever going to happen. Well, guys, we're living in a new day right now. We're living in a new day where the actual thought of a type like Donald Trump getting reelected or elected actually happened. It actually happened. So we need to take the blinders off. We need to understand that these are not the safe times that we were in. These are different times, and different things can happen. And you, as an American citizen, have got to understand that if the climate of things reaches to a plateau where we have crossed a significant line, we are moving very rapidly into something that you don't recognize, that you won't recognize this country. So that's why it's so important that, you understand that the plight of a lot of the podcasters and speakers from the left is not about separating. The election wasn't about separating. The election was about saving our democracy and saving things the way that you afford the comfortable living in the United States of America. It's changing, and it's changing rapidly. It's changing rapidly. And you have to understand that this is not anything that the American people expected, nor bought, or really knew what they were doing, because there's so much. And I use the word ignorance only because the definition of ignorance is not knowing of what goes on in government, that pretty much anything could be pushed over our heads for the majority of the people, because we don't know, and the people will suffer for not knowing. So I just want to go through a few things on what's going on just really quick here, hopefully, and let's get into perspective. That word's always hard for me to bring out. Perspective of where we are and what the strategy is going forward, because this is getting so scary that I'm looking for one particular thing to happen. And if that thing happens, then we are really messed up. And that is when our fail-safe, which is the courts, if those are ignored by this administration and a federal judge comes and says, no, you can't do that, but they still do it, we've crossed the plateau. We've crossed the plateau. There is nothing we can do at this point. Our country has changed. Do you understand what I'm saying? So let me just let you hear what Steve Bannon said 4 years ago. And guys, remember this. They have had a lot of time to get this together. 4 years. They've been working on this for a long time of getting this administration together and doing what they're doing right now. And they had a very detailed document called Project 2025 that they have been working on. So they have a head start. You know, unfortunately, Democrats were not able to play defense as much because, Joe Biden was trying to get the country going and put it back together from the previous 4 years. That it's been hard. It's been hard. So listen to this interview or this post from Jen Psaki from MSNBC. Jen Psaki is the former press secretary for the Biden administration, and she left early to pursue her career in broadcast journalism. So listen to this.
I said, all we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with three things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover.
4 years later, that's still the strategy. And guess what? Bannon says it's going great. He told the Washington Post, quote, "It's working. It's just stunning to me what they're doing. And it's not getting covered because it's too much. They're overwhelming the system." So yeah, they're going to keep flooding the zone. They're literally telling us that they're going to do that. They'll do a million crazy things, so we can't focus on any one thing, like whether they are delivering on the core promise they made about lowering costs. But the problem with flooding the zone for them is it makes it kind of hard to answer really simple questions about your agenda, like this.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right?
Relax, everyone. It's just going to take a little bit of time. That's pretty weak tea, at least from how I hear it from the sitting vice president, for what is supposed to be their number one agenda item. And just to put it all in a little perspective, Barack Obama campaigns on ending the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And it took some time, but in his first week of office, that's pretty much what he focused on in every use of power and lever he had. Joe Biden vowed to end the pandemic and bring back the economy from the brink. He spent his first week in office trying to move that agenda forward and telling the country how he was going to do it. Meanwhile, the guy who promised to lower costs for the American people is busy flooding the zone with all sorts of things, as I just outlined, and hosting House Republicans at his golf resort to discuss how they can cut taxes for rich people.
So it's called flooding the zone. That's what we're feeling right now. Flooding the zone. Democrats look like bumbling fools. The American people are sitting back waiting to see what's going on. And now the American people are starting to stress out. Starting to stress out as well because they're sending stuff so quick. This is a strategy, guys. They're sending stuff so quick. Number one, the midterms are coming up. They want all this stuff flooded and started and going that the media can't keep up, Democrats can't keep up, the judges can't keep up. So they're just flooding us. And if I were to define it, a flooding zone is a political strategy where an administration pushes numerous executive orders, agency rules, and policies changing rapidly, right? It overwhelms the opposition, right? The media and the legal system. So that is the strategy. And you saw in the interview where she was asking questions to Vice President J.D. Vance. I said his title. I can't believe it. I've accepted it, I guess. And he said that it's going to take time. they couldn't answer a lot of the questions because it's going so fast that even they, who to me are not as smart as I think they are, because Republicans don't govern well at all, they can't even answer the questions. They don't even know what's happening. So they're pushing all this stuff out there, and we'll fix what we can, and we'll do what we need to do, we'll pull back. And that's the strategy. So don't believe them. Just don't believe them. We still have it. We still have a fail-safe. So why is it happening now? Timing before the elections, yes, right? And then the attempt to solidify policies before the courts of future administrations can reverse them. Y'all know that executive orders, if they're good executive orders, another president can come in and say, we're going to leave that in place because it's working. So until another president comes in and gets rid of it, or Congress decides it's no good or whatever, that executive order will stay in place. But that's what Trump is doing. He's signing that pen just as fast as he can. And I mean, it is crazy. Yeah. So there's a breakdown of key policy changes. It just is. I mean, recent examples of policy shifts discuss notable executive orders, and there are notable executive orders, regulations, and policy shifts, I should say. All right. So a lot of them are happening in the Department of Justice, the EPA, the Health Human Services. They are going after everything. Yes, so quickly that we can't keep up. And is it going to have an impact on American lives? Yes. We don't feel it. Yes, it's only been 2.5 weeks since Trump has taken office. So there's going to be, you're going to feel some things. All this stuff is not going to affect everybody. It's going to affect the American people because these are things that have been in place for many, many years. So are we going to feel something? Are we going to get anything out of this? I don't know, because this is such a power struggle of things and setting up the top billionaires and the big tech people in this country. So it's like, where are we on this totem pole? Where is the American people? So how are these changes going to affect healthcare, immigration, environmental policies, and civil rights? We don't know, because they're doing stuff so quickly. It's going to take some time to see what is going to happen. And I'm talking about, that's what they're telling us. It's going to take some time. All right. So who benefits? Who is harmed? I think the American people in the long run will be harmed, because if you read the Project 2025 document, it sounded as if it was going to help the American people, but there was not a lot in there that's going to help the middle class and people like me. There wasn't a lot. A lot of this is political oligarchy that I just don't understand what the premise is. And we can take it back to say things like Donald Trump is a king. He wants to be a king. But if that thing goes to Congress, where Donald Trump wants to change the Constitution where a president can go a third term, that was gotten rid of after Franklin Roosevelt and all of his terms and some others. If they get to a point where they can go in there and change that, we're crossing that line, guys. We're crossing the line from a democracy that we know into something that you don't know. All right? So you've got to get up and do something. You've got to write your congressman. You can't just sit back and let this happen. There's not enough of us out here that's talking. Democrats are scrambling, trying to figure out. But there are some necessary milestones that could happen. And if those happen, then, we are going to be messed up. So how are these changes being implemented so quickly? Through executive orders. We just said that, right? And then federal agencies. So the president, the executive, has a lot of leeway with executive orders. And there are some agencies that are executive branches. So he can do a lot of this stuff by just with the pen, And we always wanted our president to have some power, a little bit yielding power from the other two. It's equal power, but the president needs to be a president, right? So there are some things that he can do, like pardon, That's a presidential power. Our forefathers knew what they were doing when they did this. So they're very smart people, believe it or not. They are. But when you've lived under a monarchy with a king, King George at that point, then you know the things that were really going to not work and become a democracy in a democratic environment. So they were smart, but they had experience as well with it because they lived it when the 13 colonies were there. So why should Americans stay hopeful? The courts are already intervened. Judges are blocking policies that violate laws or are unconstitutional. An example, some cases are where courts have ruled against some of these mandates. Heard about some of those where the judge has stopped the birthright citizenship of a couple of judges. And I hope and pray that they continue to do that. But the minute that he crosses that line and don't follow the rules of the courts, then we're in trouble. Now, Trump should never have been writing on the pen an executive order to undo birth. It's in the Constitution. He can't do that. So that was his first strategy, right? He does an executive order, which is unconstitutional because this is a part of the Constitution. If you want to change the Constitution, you have to go through Congress. A law has to be passed. It has to go to Senate confirmation, everything. And then the president ultimately has to sign it or whatever. So that's the way it's supposed to work. But you see what I'm saying? Flooding the zones. And there are a lot of legal precedents and checks and balances as well. The judicial system is designed to curb executive overreach. If they go too far, the courts can say, hold on, buddy, hold on. No, can't do that. Even though our Supreme Court has made some little changes with the office as far as some things, but the courts can still go, nope. So the role of this grassroots activism is pushing back. The courts can still push back. All right. So what can you do? You can stay informed. Fact-check information. Support legal challenges through donations or advocacy groups. If you hear somebody that's out there doing something, find out about it. Read about it. And you contact your representative and you vote in the elections to ensure accountability. Now, I know that elections are coming up here, and that's too far out. That's too far away. We got 2 years. We got 3 special elections that are coming up that might give the House a boost. Hopefully, we'll see how those work out. But the Trump legal team, they're doing some counter suits. So let me tell you what they are doing right now is for as countersuits from the Trump administration. So listen to this. The Justice Department sues Chicago and Illinois over sanctuary protections for immigrants. All right. So, we have the sanctuary cities, right? So the Trump administration says Democrat-run cities and states are pushing back. So a lot of the cities and states, the Justice Department of Illinois and Chicago over their efforts to limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. So the governor of Illinois, he kind of pushed back. He's not following the rules. So he pushed back hard on this one in the Trump, on his state laws. And so he's being sued. The lawsuit filed in federal court in Chicago asked the court to immediately end a number of laws. So Chicago, so there's a fight going on there. So we have the courts that's going to help us with some of this stuff. We do have the courts that's going to help us. And, that's our only fail-safe. So one of the biggest things that is happening right now in flooding the zone is the dismantling of the USAID agency. Now, this one kind of bothers me a lot. If you don't know what USAID is, guys, let me just tell you what USAID is. Let's see if I can find you. Dismantling of the USAID. I'll tell you what it is here. So, Dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development, and USAID is what we call it. So here's the impact if they get rid of it, which they've already reduced it down to like 200 and something workers. Loss of American jobs, of course. That's the first thing. I mean, it's going to go from thousands of jobs to 294, right? It's like contractors, business development. There's a lot of people that work with these agencies as well. Harm to U.S. exports. This is what could happen with them dismantling. Without it, fewer trade opportunities may emerge, hurting American farmers and manufacturing. National security risk. Increased global instability. USAID funds initiatives that reduce poverty, strengthen governance. And the whole bill is to help these countries be on their own so they don't come here. I mean, isn't that what you want, Republicans, right? So it's going to be a higher military burden if USAID is dismantled. The U.S. may need to increase military intervention in unstable regions, leading to higher defense spending and potential troop deployments. Yes. And then there's public health. Now, the USAID, they're out there helping with malaria, diseases like Ebola, HIV/AIDS. Without it, the risk of global crisis reaching the U.S. increases significantly. These people are out there working in the trenches in other countries, giving aid. There's going to be a loss of medical supply chains. USAID helps secure medical resources for global health initiatives. Ending these efforts could disrupt vaccine distribution and other health programs that benefit Americans. And then the damage to the U.S. global influence. USAID is a major tool for soft power. If removed, other nations like China and Russia could fill the vacuum, reducing U.S. influence abroad. So, guys, this is kind of our presence in these other countries. You know, there's going to be a strained relations with allies by doing this. The impact on disaster relief and humanitarian aid. I mean, we helped all these countries with food. You've ever seen in the middle of the night, the videos of how we're helping people abroad and they're dropping food from all these countries? Americans have always done that. So this is like pulling them out. This is the country that we want to become. So dismantling USAID would reduce America's global leadership, weaken its economy, and increase the security risk while diminishing its ability to respond to crises. Although some argue that cutting foreign aid saves money, the long-term consequences could cost the U.S. far more in economic losses, military expense, and public health emergencies. So I'm in agreement with making cost cuts to things. Go in there. Look at each program. And if we're sending way too much or we're using a product that's costing more money, we can get a cheaper product here. Or we're paying this company way too much, we can negotiate. Yes, let's go in there and do some cost-cutting things. But what they're doing right here, guys, is just crazy. This is flooding the zones. Cutting an agency like this. And this is some of the stuff that Elon Musk has given as a recommendation. So our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has kind of assured us that they're not going to dismantle the operations. But when you have thousands and thousands of people out there working and they're going to reduce it down to 294, what does that tell you? There's no way these operations are going to go forth. Do you understand what's happening here? This is a huge agency that we have. And they're taking it down from like 5,000 employees to maybe 294 is the last number I heard. This is ridiculous, guys. Ridiculous. So this is what's happening. And I just had to get on here to say, flooding the zone, guys. As much as you think that you can sit back and do nothing, if they cross this plateau, where they don't honor the courts, or Congress passes something stupid and silly like giving Trump another term, we have done it. We are there. This is no longer going to be the America that you knew and love, and the home of the free and the brave. It's not going to be that. I know y'all think that this is crazy of someone thinking that this is going to happen, but we've been trying to warn you guys. Everything that Project 2025 said is happening. It's happening. And they're doing it at such a gale force speed that nobody can keep up. But I don't want us to have too much despair. We do have a fail-safe. We do have a buffer with the courts. With the courts. But you have to stay abreast of what's going on and don't let your guards down. Whatever you can do, spread the truth. Talk to people. Help them understand this is not your normal election where Democrats and Republicans are in rule and they do a few things. No. This is dismantling the American democracy as we know it to something totally different. Now, the Republicans will argue that this is going to save money and put a lot of money back in our pockets, but they have yet to show us how. Because I have not seen anything that's going to be putting money back into the American people's pocket. How? They can't even answer that question because they're flooding the zone so quickly. Well, that's my thing on that. But I want to leave with this one thing of one of the initiatives that has been a part of the pen has been the diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, as they call it. One of the main things that Trump is taking. He can't stop other countries from doing it. All these companies that have been stopping the DEI initiative have done it just because they didn't have to. They're doing it because they wanted to, because they want to support Donald Trump and his initiative. But Donald Trump can only do that in the federal government. It's what he did. He turned it off in the military and he turned it off in the federal government. These initiatives. And we're going to have a whole nother discussion on that initiative. But I wanted to show this one interaction from Abby Phillips' Newsnight in America. I like this particular format that she has on CNN because it brings people from both sides together to talk. And what we really need to do, sit down and talk this stuff out. So they got into a discussion onto DEI, and they made a little headway, just a twinge of headway of trying to make the right understand what DEI is. And, and I don't think they got anywhere but maybe a millisecond of it. But I want you to just listen to it and tell me what you think. So here we go with the discussion of DEI that held on Abby Phillips' Newsnight. So here we go.
Cabinet that has perhaps more Fox hosts than people who
you know what makes
people
them
of color.
Yes. No, don't do it. Let her finish.
And I would just ask Scott, if race is not the issue, then why is DEI mentioned every
5
single
seconds.
day as a solution to every single problem that faces this
Because of how pervasive it is,
but do you
and
think
how
it's
hateful
really
it is
true?
to an actual conservative ideological view.
But do you think it is true that all of America's ills, from the plane crash to whatever it is, wildfires, due to DEI for real?
I think that if you believe in the fundamental principle of America, which is that we guarantee everybody an equal chance, not an equal outcome, but an equal chance, then trying to go around that principle, conservatives don't believe in it. And most people who believe in America don't believe in it, number one. Number two, the concept of not hiring the best person for the job in government or anywhere else has been repeatedly rejected by the American people, the Supreme Court, and everything else. And so
what do you mean? So I guess what I'm saying is, like, if that is the case, then people are questioning the actual qualifications of many people Donald Trump hired for jobs. So do you think that he actually...
Why?
Because Elon Musk doesn't even go here.
Do you think that he...
That's why.
This is the question people are asking. This is the question that Ryan Clark just asked. Did Donald Trump, for Health and Human Services, find the person with the best expertise to address
this is not a.
When it comes to the Department of Defense, did he find the person with the best expertise to address those issues, or did he just find people who he liked?
Political appointees have one qualification. They serve at the pleasure of the president because the president believes that person's going to best carry out their agenda. That is the only qualification.
And to protect and defend the Constitution.
And that is the only. That's the only qualification for a political appointee.
Competency doesn't matter.
Of course, they're
Say it.
Of course, he
not.
believes they're competent. If he didn't believe they were competent, he wouldn't appoint them.
I'm not being fair with that. You're not being fair with that response. She asked you a very simple question: yes or no. Look at the appointees. Do you believe DEI had anything to do with those appointees? Do you believe they were qualified? Do you think they would protect and defend the Constitution that represents all of the people of the United States of America?
I think Mark Rubio.
I think you all have literally no idea how the government works, is what I actually
do.
I
do. I served in it at a higher level than anyone here.
A couple people at this table have served in the government.
Yeah, me too.
Including for this former president.
I just want to say that I think the premise that DEI exists and therefore the people that got the opportunity, perhaps because of DEI, are not qualified is a flawed premise.
Correct.
And I think that is what is so frustrating about the argument around DEI. We know in this country historically, and even today, there are still injustices in this country based on race, based on gender, based on ideology.
Based on who your daddy played
golf with. Yes.
Okay, that happens every single day. We know that.
But it happens every single day all over the planet.
That's
the
what I'm
planet Earth. It is human nature. It is human every single and we're the best at it. We're the best at trying to
Donald Trump's our president.
Arthur, I guess that's exactly my point. I agree with you. I think that it is true that there have been preferences not for merit since the dawn of time, and that in this country right now, the same people who are going after DEI, which is about giving opportunities to people who have been historically marginalized, are just as willing to hire their friends.
Is that what equity means?
Okay, I had to stop you right there because he put himself right into that trap. He says it has been the dawn of time. That's the way we do things. Sans why there is DEI, because people are going to do what they've always done, right? They're going to hire their friends. They're going to hire people of the same color. They're going to do all the things. They're not going to do the right thing. So DEI opens that up and gives other people an opportunity. All it says was, hey, instead of looking at this group of people, why don't we do this? Look at this group of people. It just opens their eyes. Nobody's forcing you. It's just that here's a pool of people you can look at. There's no government thing around it. It just says, this is what we're going to do. And so he opened it up when he said it like that. So this is why DEI existed. Let's go on.
Giving opportunity or guaranteeing outcomes?
No, it's giving access.
Because that's what equity means.
It's
a difference. There's a difference between equality and equity.
No, it's giving access.
I just want to answer his question because I think
Wouldn't
this
talent
is super,
and hard work
Scott,
give you
I think
access?
this is incredibly important for you to understand and for everybody to understand at home, okay? This is where I think we go crossways on this issue. You just asked the question, what does equity mean? Does it mean equality or does it mean access to opportunities? And conservatives want to define it a particular way, but you have to acknowledge, I'm asking you to acknowledge that people who believe in DEI do not define it that way. They do not define it as equality.
I think they define it as trying to guarantee outcomes, and I think they define it as trying to punish people they don't like.
Scott, that's
wrong race, wrong.
Speaking from more of the middle of the country who's not hyper-partisan on this issue, I think that people generally think diversity is a virtue. It makes businesses better. It makes institutions better. But they also don't like when you have companies or organizations that are spending huge amounts of money to stand up DEI office. As an example, Fairfax County Public Schools, $400,000 spent on a DEI.
I'm sorry, Alyssa. That's Alyssa Fair Griffin from The View. That's not a good one. People don't care about how much money is being spent on DEI. People are upset, Alyssa Fair Griffin, because they think that people of color are getting preferential treatment. That's what they're upset about. They could care less that you have a DEI department at your job. No, people are not thinking about that. That's not it, Alyssa.
Office, but kids are not reading at the levels that they should. They're not advancing at the levels that they should. It's not the issue
But were
of
they
diversity.
doing that before the office was stood up?
Well, no, and probably not. And so I'm not saying the connection.
So maybe implementing DEI might actually help people have a better
But it's not an argument against DEI. It's how much of our resources are we actually putting?
But that's not the way the conversation is being posed in America today. The conversation about DEI and woke and all of that sounds about marginalized Black and brown people who already are threatened seem to be threatened in this community, in this society, and they're not getting the same opportunities. It was the same thing with affirmative action. Went to UCLA. they got rid of affirmative action. Everyone said you got in because of affirmative action. When I graduated, affirmative action didn't take my test. Affirmative action didn't help me get to where I'm at today. It gave me access that I didn't have based on the opportunity that I lacked because of the circumstances I was born into, which had nothing to do with me, but the country in which we live in. So the reality is—
Have you seen the test scores of UCLA Medical, by the way?
My point being, Scott, is that everyone doesn't have the same access. People like to hire their friends. They like to hire the people that they like to be around.
Do you think they like to hire the best people for the job?
But I also think around the idea of diversity.
No, Donald Trump hired all of his friends.
The issue in this country right now is we live in different realities.
That's right.
I live in a reality where I know I do not have the same opportunity as you. I know I don't.
And you know
and
that
I know
too.
what, Scott?
And you know that.
Let me just tell you about me.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I want to answer this.
I'm not talking about how you feel. I'm talking about how I feel. Me, a black woman in this country.
But not in this city.
And I will run. And if you want
Look,
me
I'm a New Yorker, not in this city. You cannot say that. You can't say that in this city.
I'm not talking about New York. I'm talking about actually
let her finish.
right here. I got a law degree, a master's, and 2 bachelors. Probably more education than all of y'all added up together at this table,
Fine
right?
by me.
And I have always been the least paid person on payroll at every institution I have worked in. And it's not
Even
because—
in the White House?
Even in the White House.
Well, whose fault is that? I don't think you worked for George W. or Trump.
Well, guess what happened when I was there? DEI.
All right, before this next exchange comes, Ashley and Scott Jennings, both of them are regular pundits on the show of Abby Phillips' show, and they become quite friends. The opposites separated, but this is where Scott Jennings, who is probably my most unfavorite, this guy gets under my skin so bad. They had a moment here, and I just wanted to just point that out, that there was a moment made here. So let's just listen to this exchange. It's quite endearing. For a change, people are talking, and that's all we need to do is talk. Let's talk about this stuff, and maybe we can get some real change done.
Scott.
I'm head Scott.
Look,
You're my friend. I respect you tremendously. I think you're probably the smartest operative in the Democratic Party, and they should listen to you more. That's number one. Number two, you and I share a comparable background. We're both from the Midwest. We both come from middle-class families, lower middle-class families maybe. I actually think we share a lot of similarities in our journey. But I think you made it, and you are the most respected voice often at every room or every table you're in, not because of anything other than your talent and your work ethic. And that's all anybody ever is asking for, is for people with talent and work ethic to make it. And that's what I see in you. That's how I see you.
But let me tell you something about my story and my family's story, is that we have faced discrimination. I have faced discrimination. I just said I was the least paid person, even in this moment sometimes, to my counterparts. It is just the reality of the country we live in. And I'm not saying— I do believe I'm qualified. I know I'm qualified. You won't ever tell me I'm not qualified. But the system that I live in doesn't matter about my qualifications.
I don't agree, because
in 2025.
Oh, come
I don't
on.
think we're there in 2025.
You can't deny
That's just not true. That's just not true.
There is a mountain of evidence that suggests that you are wrong. Okay, let's just
Again,
take Ashley.
I'm a New Yorker, so I'm jaded. I have the Attorney General as a black woman. The mayor's a black man. The head of the Senate is a black man.
Okay, New York is a small representation.
Well, small.
Of the
New York is
United
not that
States
small.
of America.
Politics. Let me talk about
every judge
numbers.
I appear before is either a woman or a person of color.
Ashley just gave an anecdote, but the numbers also show black women are one of the most educated demographics in this country and one of the least paid. Why?
Now, why does that make any sense? The least paid, the most highly educated, but they're not in all the positions. And he was saying that New York is a diverse city. It's a diverse city, which is how other cities should look, but it's not always true. And it's not always in the best positions either. But Abby makes a good point. Let's listen more.
Would that make any sense?
Why would that make any sense? And don't talk to me about the judges you stand before. Talk to me about the theory.
Hold on.
Talk to me about the world in which we live in and the system that we live in.
Let's look at the United States Supreme Court. How can you say we're not going to look at that from the top to the bottom? And I'm talking about the legal system.
New York is a more progressive.
And we just got a black woman.
Hold up. Let me.
We just got a black woman on the
Okay,
board.
we got a black man from the 70s.
You brought up the Supreme Court.
Or the 60s.
One.
Did you know, Arthur, that there are many...
Hold on. What percentage of it does it represent the United States of America?
Why
So why does it matter? So we got to go by numbers?
Why is it so hard
we gotta
acknowledge what she just said?
Why is it so hard?
Why is it just one? Why is there only one Italian American?
No, but why is it so hard for you to acknowledge what she just said about black women being the most educated?
I did acknowledge it. I said that's not my experience.
Okay,
if that was the case,
because you're not a
more
black woman.
No, I'm a New Yorker, and that's
New
not
York
the way
is not
it is.
representative of the rest
You're
of America.
correct.
That's also what
It's also the most diverse city in the country.
Well, that's exactly.
Like,
so of
why
course
wouldn't
there's
it
more
be?
representation
It's a little
in
more
women.
representative.
And Scott, I think if you really see, you said something very beautiful. This is your friend. You guys share a lot of the same values. You guys think alike. You guys are literally friends off air. You text, you have good conversations. There is the yes and in that. There is something that says to me that you know what she's saying is true. You think she's smart. You know that she's smart. She's more educated than mostly everyone at this table. And so what she's saying isn't a lie. What she's saying is a real life experience. And so why is it so hard to understand why something like diversity, equity, inclusion needs to be a part of what we do in a system that never even acknowledged a group of people?
So let's stop right there. So this is where Scott Jennings and Ashley Allison are very good friends on the air. I mean, they're adversaries in different parts of the room. She's Democrat. She worked for Obama. He worked for George W. Bush and Mitch McConnell. But he trusts her because she's been given good information and he's starting to listen to her. This is the power of us sitting down and talking these things out. This is the power of it all, guys. This is the power. And that's what I've always advocated and said that we need to do is when we sit down and talk out this thing of why black people are so like they are and understand where we are and how we only want to become equal. We don't want to take over. We just want the same that you have. It's always been about being equal. Always. Let's listen in.
Never saw us as a human commodity. Just literally never noticed who we were. And now here we are years later asking for some simple rights, some simple civility. She's asking to be paid like you get paid. She's asking to be acknowledged like you get acknowledged. And she knows that is not the case because she is a black woman.
She had a high-ranking position in the White House of the United States of America.
Dear friend,
she is one of the most celebrated political operatives in the country.
Do
you know how hard I had to work to get that?
Do you know how hard the son of a garbage man had to work at it? So I'm just telling you.
I'm not saying that, but
talent and work ethic are everything. And that's why I think you're here.
It's not true. It's just not true. It's just not true.
The other thing is the access to opportunity is, I know you don't want to think that is true, but access to opportunity is what DEI is supposed to address. And not just when it comes to race, although race is important, but when it comes to women, when it comes to people with disabilities, when it comes to people from different socioeconomic brackets, from rural parts of the country.
I think that's the biggest issue. There's different socioeconomic brackets more than race and gender.
Now we're trying to say that everything is equal just because I say it is, even though all the evidence...
Who said everything is equal?
That's it right there. That's what I'm always saying. Everything is equal right now. Black people, be quiet. It's equal. Just like that. Just like after we've had separate but equal, or we couldn't go to this school, we couldn't do this, we couldn't buy a house. Everything is equal now. It is equal. And it is. But are the minds and the actions there? No. A lot of things have stopped. And you know why they stopped? Not because the people did it, because laws were put in place that did it. It was laws. It wasn't the people. It was mainly the laws. So that's why when you take a law away from anything that's helping black people, we're out there again, hoping people are going to do the right thing. And most of the time, I'll say this, they will. And that's my being hopeful. But there's some times where they won't. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know what the ratio of that is of the people that will. Thank God we have some people here that have conscience and believe in people doing the right thing. But you still got a lot of bad apples out here, guys. We just do. Let's finish this.
Well, that's literally, we're already living in a meritocratic society is what Scott and his colleagues want to say, when that's actually factually not true.
Do you not think everything is equal?
But I think it's generally, true.
So
I think it'll seek its own level. I don't think the government should be telling us to seek its own level.
But you literally earlier just said
DEI is not about the government. Y'all are talking to private companies and telling them you can't operate
it's about both.
the way you want to operate.
But Arthur, you literally just said, I don't think it will seek itself out, because you literally just said human nature. That's how we operate.
That's right.
Sometimes, which is why the civil rights movement was so important.
I think it's more socioeconomic than it is.
This is why, like, when
racial.
they talk about like canceling the Department of Education, why they talk about the federal government. The reason why the federal government was so important, particularly for Black people to seek justice in this country, is because it was the one bastion of hope that people had when states took control and they had discriminatory practice laws.
Okay, but
the
that was
Supreme
a long time
Court.
ago.
What? How long ago? Tell me how long ago was that?
How long ago was that? We gotta go. We gotta go, but it was not that long ago.
I know. Yeah.
All right, so that was a great discussion. I love Abby Phillips' show. Out of all the things at CNN, when I was on protest to CNN, that show I liked it because it brought people together to talk about things that we did not agree on, and it gets really heated sometimes. It gets very heated because the right is tough, guys. I mean, breaking a MAGA person is not easy to make them understand, and occasionally there are glimmers of agreement, But what kills me the most, though, is that you go to your quarters and then she has this fun thing at the end where you come with your nightcap and they come with little anecdotes or whatever. Then everybody's like back in their corners and they're nice again. It's just weird. But it tells me that there's hope for us to understand one another and get this thing right. So just to summarize this entire podcast, guys, Trump and his administration are flooding the zone. They're flooding the zone. They're going to push this stuff out quicker than you can think. You're going to wake up and you're going to look at your phone. You're going to see this has happened or this has happened or that person's been let go. And it's going to drive you crazy. But know and believe that we do have some fail safes. We do. And the Democrats, I know they're looking bumbly right now, but stuff is coming at them so quickly that they're trying their best to mobilize and help get some of this stuff done. But you know what Joe Biden did, guys? Joe Biden, y'all called him out. That's still my boy. Joe is still my boy because he packed that court with judges all over the country. And a lot of them were African-American judges. So these judges are everywhere and they're going to be going, stop, Donnie boy, stop it. You're not going to be able to do that. But I tell you, what we need to look out for, and keep this in your mind, when he crosses these certain plateaus where he totally ignores the law. He's already done it, some in his own trial, like he wouldn't come to subpoenas. He's getting close to not doing it. And when he was going through his own trial, there were certain things he wouldn't do. He was playing with the court, but the courts still can command armed officers to come and get you. Policemen can come and get you based on what the courts say. Do you know what I mean? So the courts have jurisdiction over some things. All right? So let's just make sure that we know and we keep on watch. But once they cross that plateau of some things that our controls are gone in this equal branch of government, then that's when we start to worry. All right. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed today's discussion of flooding the zone. And don't give up. Let's not give up, guys. Let's keep up the fight. And we will be right here talking with you and keeping you abreast of what's going on in our great country. And until we meet again, goodbye.